It's pretty cool.
It is cool.
Jason, move your table completely up. There we go.
To the middle, right?
Yeah,
Remember, to the middle.
As we can see Rob.
Block Brad.
Why would we want to do that?
Okay, test the microphone for me, Joe.
Test, test, test.
Did you hear Jill? Go ahead, Jill.
Hello. Are we
Okay, I
good?
want to see if Jill, can we hear Jill?
Can you hear me?
Charlie.
Test, test, test.
Yes.
Oh, it's a delay.
Okay, we heard you. Got it. Okay, thank you, Jill. Bye.
It is a delay.
He's here, he's
Don't
gone.
start it yet.
It's live,
We're on.
Relax.
It's too late.
Ready, set, go.
but we can see from Jason forward, so just.
All right. What?
You gotta be flexible,
You're live,
Tony, if
right?
you're learning that.
So,
So Angie,
You're on.
needs to talk louder, is what I was told.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got 10.
10.
Yeah.
She's on here.
She's over
Okay.
here.
Put her on the mic, just tell her to talk louder if she could, is what.
Say something, Angie.
Hello.
She needs to be
You could-
louder, put the microphone.
You could
down
put
right
this microphone right down on it, and then you use the other one.
We're good?
Are we good?
I think so. You go.
Okay, we are back in open session. Get a motion and a second to approve the minutes of closed session.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve,
Brad.
sorry,
Steve.
Brad.
Oh, Steve. I'm sorry. It was Steve.
And a second,
I second it.
Robin.
Robin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carries. Personnel list.
Yeah, we have a motion.
Go ahead.
Individuals we are putting up for recommendation for hire is Charlie Sherman as EJHS Principal and Tony Pullen as EHS Assistant Principal for 2020, 2021.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the personnel list?
I'll make that motion.
That was Brad.
Motion by Brad. We have a second.
I'll second.
Second, Kathleen. Roll call.
Robin Klosterman.
Yes.
Brad Waldoff.
Yes.
Jill Winling.
Yes.
Jane Willenberg.
Yes.
Kathleen Smith, yes. Steve Bone.
Yes.
Angie Byers.
Yes.
Okay, you need to step forward so people can, Charlie, you first. Let's just go you first. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You guys kill me today.
Come up here. I would shake hands, but I already have. Want to welcome you aboard. I appreciate the 12 years I think you've been in the district. And this is another step, a big step to move up and help the junior high. We'll look for good things and good leadership, and I'm sure we'll get it. And from the board's perspective and the district, I want to say thank you and good luck. And if you have anything, I'd like to give you the opportunity to share if you have anything to say.
Well, first of all, thank you again. Humbled, honored, and to be honest, I'm excited. Really excited to get the process going. I'm excited to see the kids again, to see the staff again, face to face, and I'm really looking forward to the 2021 school year. So I appreciate it, I really do.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you guys.
Tony? Just want to introduce Tony Pullen. Tony is a 93 grad from EHS and been over in the Shelbyville district, as he shared earlier with you. Really excited to have you in the district. Moving your family over, so moving into the EHS assistant principal job. And so hopefully you can bring some solid, you've got a solid background in that area. And so we're looking forward to having you. And so we want to welcome you and then also give you an opportunity to share.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. Honestly, a dream come true. Graduate of Effingham High School. Definitely looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting to meet the kids, all the faculty members, all the support staff, just anyone involved in the Effingham community and school district. And I just can't wait to get started.
Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you, appreciate it. Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we,
Give a minute. Hang on.
I'm trying to pull up the YouTube side. I can't, so I can see it and watch where we're at.
There's 8 of us.
Okay.
6, 2.
This is it.
All right, probably gonna have to sit at that table so we can get you on the or on the camera. Please. I guess I jumped down to new business, sorry.
Can you see him, Penny?
Yeah, you're gonna wanna
Yeah, do we need to go back to administration?
Don't leave that.
We can do those financial reports when we're done.
Okay.
Jason can come in.
So we're at new business, Angie.
We're skipping down to new business.
So we're skipping all, okay.
Jason, Mr. Fox will come back in a little bit later instead of people coming running in and out, since we can only
Okay.
have
We have
10.
Charlie and Kurt in here now.
Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about the student handbook recommendations for the 2021 school year. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Roberts and Mr. Shorman.
Okay, we ask Mr. Schwerman and Mr. Roberts to come in, go through the handbook recommendations for 2021. Mr. Schwerman, you oversee most of that, or at least the process.
Yep. So yeah, the process starts back in January. Basically, each individual building holds their own meeting at some point in February. So each building within the district will hold one. Usually each building will hold their own meeting. The lower grade levels will hold theirs after school, and then the high school and the junior high hold theirs in the evening at the high school. So after each individual building meets, we come together as a district and we meet here. And then that's when everybody throws their recommendations or their changes on the table. We discuss them and then compile a report, and then we send it to you guys. So individual buildings as a district, and then we bring it to you guys, and you guys get to decide moving forward if that's where you guys want to go or if not. So
the main, just for clarification, I see two items. One was remove a reference to timeout in the handbooks.
yeah, so that's with the state basically saying, physical restraints and the use of the word timeout is no longer allowed. So I think ELC, Southside, and Central all use the word timeout in their handbook. And with the change in the law, we basically have to take that out and call it something different.
What are we calling it?
What did we decide? We've thrown around a lot of ideas, and I think we ultimately came to.
Just so I know what to use at home instead of
Yeah.
timeout.
Did the state knock on your door?
I don't see it on.
No longer going to timeout. What's it going into tomorrow?
Yeah, it just says
Sorry for the tough
It says
question.
to remove the timeout verbiage on here.
We can call it anything but timeout.
Anything.
Okay.
Okay.
What-
Take
what do we-
breaks, what I think it was.
Yeah.
So I don't really
Right.
know.
Angie thought it was just to take a break.
Take a break, time away.
Something like that.
I want to say one of them. Jennifer usually crosses. Let me look here. I'll answer it before we leave.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Fair enough.
Okay, while we're looking at that, the other item was at the high school, updating the policy, changes to the dress code. That's page 61 in your handbook, or excuse me, in the handbook, in your packet, board packet. Mr. Roberts, would you want to?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to take a minute to kind of tell you what the catalyst behind this was in the first place. And so just in a general sense, if you think about a dress code, it is probably something that needs to be reviewed once in a while. And really the example I would give is it would probably be inappropriate for us to implement a dress code from 1958. And so because things do change, it's a pretty good idea to take a look at this. So there were some concerns that brought, you have to excuse me, that started a long time ago. So I'm not going to remember some of the numbers, but there was a concern that came to us probably late November, December. And we put together a team, I think about 9 teachers. I let anybody that wanted to be involved with it. And we sit down and we started talking about some of those concerns and what we probably wanted to do with those. And so one of the things that came from that is, as these teachers were discussing, they were finding that there were things that were in this that were a little unclear. And so one of the things that we did then is we sit down and try to figure out what was it we wanted to do, make it clear for both our teachers to be able to look at and understand what they need to do with it, and also our students. So we went through and we made some changes, and we tried to clear up a few things, and I'll give you some examples in a minute of some things we tried to clear up. Then we sit down and invited students to sit in with us as well. So then we sat down with students to volunteer when they would come in. They sat down and kind of gave their opinions on some of the things that we talked about. And then from there, we came up with what we have in front of you. So just to give you an example, what we tried to do was in this, at the beginning, it talks about in a general, the student should be clothed from shoulder to mid-thigh. And so what we tried to do is kind of make sure that everything kind of matched up with that in some way or another. So there was some language that basically talked about holes in the jeans, and that any holes above the knee were not allowed. Now, the problem that we saw with that is if you have a hole above the knee, but it's not above mid-thigh, you could have shorts that were mid-thigh, but you could have a hole that wasn't. So what we tried to do, you can see the change in there. What we did was we talked about no holes above mid-thigh. All right, or I think that the language there is now skin, exposed skin above mid-thigh. So that's the catalyst behind it. We felt like this is an easier way. My plan was that as you guys if you were to put this in place last month, that we would use the rest of this school year with our students to kind of get them ready for this new and kind of get that out there. Of course, that can't quite be the plan now, but that would be where we were at. We're trying to get people to kind of understand where the changes were coming and make sure that everybody understood that as far as students go. But that was the catalyst behind it. We're hoping that this is just a little clearer and a little more consistent, really with the idea that we know that basically shoulder, mid-thigh. One of the things that was kind of student driven was we've always had the every top has to have a shoulder or a sleeve. I'm sorry. Yeah, everybody's got to have shoulders. Everything has to have sleeves. One of the things that has changed quite a bit in the fashion world since then is the cold shoulder shirt. And so one of the things that we put in there was, and we took this from another school, we made an exception for that. That was something that as students talked about, that is really kind of hard to determine if I've got a sleeve on and then it's got a hole here, a hole here, and a hole here, is that a sleeve or not a sleeve? So we've made that exception. And owing to the fact that teachers and students alike felt like there was nothing inappropriate with that type of sleeve. So that's kind of the catalyst behind the change.
I didn't know what a cold shouldered shirt is. Maybe I should.
Neither did I when this all started.
Okay.
Brad.
Steve hasn't worn one yet.
About your wife.
Okay, I'll ask her when I get home.
You find it?
I text Sherry.
Okay.
Well,
Sherry said take a break.
Take a break.
take a break.
Any questions?
No, we appreciate you guys spending the time to go
The
through this. I
cold
know it takes a
shoulder-
lot of work.
The open cold shoulder bothers me a little bit just because some of those are, you're going to run into an issue there because some of them are going to be spaghetti straps and not an actual strap here. And some of them are going to be, they're going to push you to your extreme there.
So, and that's one of the reasons when we talk to every one of when we talk to the students about this, if you look at the very bottom of this, one of the recommendations that I put in there is interpretation of dress code violations is up to the building administration and is determined based on safety and appropriateness. And this is something that basically whenever we talk to students, whenever we realize that every one of these things when it comes to dress code is, it's a judgment call. Right. And so even our students that talk to us realize they all felt there needed to be a dress code. I mean, that's kind of every student felt there needed to be a dress code. The agreement on that dress code is where it really falls. And so every one of them agreed, somebody has to be the authority that says that. And that's why we could put that in there at the bottom, because there are probably in any of these, there are going to be those people who kind of push this to the limit. And really, there's no way necessarily to basically say there is something absolutely 100% perfect. So I agree with you that somebody's going to push the limit to that. And that's why that was in there to give that administration the opportunity to be able to say that really doesn't fit within what the letter of what is written is in the handbook.
I do have some concerns. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're saying that the administration is the one that is ultimately going to make the final decision on that, I think that that's going to set it up where administration are going to be almost put against one another when it comes to one student has came in and she has a hole above her knee, but hers is okay, but then they're going to bring in somebody else. And then when we talk about holes above the knee, and I know this has been something because I actually did reach out to some people that were on the committee that you had put together, Mr. Roberts. And it was talked about as if you cut those jeans where the hole is, they're considered shorts. And I thought that to an extent, but then my other thought was, well, we won't have to worry about them wearing those pants again because now they are shorts. But I have an issue with changing the dress code because I feel like we need to make sure that we're pretty much the same at the junior high and the high school. And at our discipline meeting, I had specifically asked if there was an issue with the dress code at the junior high, and there is not. So my concern on changing these things is we're going to be opening it up, and it's going to make it even more difficult to be able to follow that dress code policy if we make the changes.
I would like to speak to that for a minute. So, and I don't mean to be any disrespect to Mr. Schwarman, okay? So if I was at that meeting and Mr. Schwarman had basically said that there had been, and I don't want to misquote you, okay? But there had been a number of students that you kind of had somewhat of a revolt, but you kind of put that down, that they had been having to duct tape on people's jeans. I see those as problems. And I'm trying to avoid those types of things by making this a little clear. We really haven't changed this dress code in a sense. All we've done is try to clear it up a little bit. And so in that regard, I'm not trying to change what our values are or anything along those lines. I certainly understand the idea of being consistent with the junior high and what that is. We're just kind of making that suggestion. I have reached out to the junior high to invite them to be a part of this.
So if I'm reading this right, the changes are on page 61 and that's what's being recommended, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other board members who have questions regarding the dress code changes?
I think dress codes are always difficult because just as you said, it's always judgmental to some degree. So it just becomes how specific do you get. And I know we had talked earlier about a lack of consistency, and the more general it is, I think the more open it is to a lack of consistency. So since that was a previous concern that at least I had, was a lack of consistency in applying the dress code at the high school, I am in support of maybe clarifying a little better, and hopefully it works. And I know that this is reviewed every year. So if parts of it don't work, hopefully we will continue to revise the discipline code and specifically the dress code so that we finally come up with something that does work.
Robin, do you think this gives an appropriate level of detail? Do you
Yes,
think this gives
I
an
think it is.
appropriate level
I
of
think it
detail?
is an appropriate level of
Okay.
detail. Yes.
I think that's good.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I think I left off there, we would need a motion and second to approve them or not to approve them. I forgot to put that on the detailed agenda.
So I'll make that motion to approve as written.
I'll second it.
Brad, you're making a motion
Yes, to approve.
to approve it?
Yes. Robin second.
Robin second.
Voice.
Voice vote.
Okay, you're gonna have to help me out because I don't know if I can hear everybody at the same time.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Everybody was in favor.
I oppose. So it's 6-1, motion carries.
Correct.
All right.
Can you send Mr. Fox in? Need to apologize. In our discussion in closed session, if you want to look at page 3 on your packet, there were some other appointments on there.
I was like, wait, I thought we had other,
Deep in
I thought we had
conversation.
other personnel.
Yeah. So when we got out, I looked at those.
With one exception.
Yes.
Right.
So the other item that I overlooked, but was the benefit specialist position. With that individual, appointment of Teresa, that would be Kim Milbachler as benefit specialist, appointing Teresa Vogt as EHS head volleyball coach, and accepting resignation of Carissa Niemerg as football cheerleading coach. So those would be the 3 that missed.
We're going to table the seasonal tech workers.
Yes,
So we need a motion.
we need a motion in a second.
Yes, we would need a motion.
Yeah, we'll need a motion in a second.
I'll make that
We have
motion.
we have a
Robin,
motion. Go ahead.
go ahead.
So we need a motion to approve the other individuals listed on our personnel list.
Robin made that motion.
I'll second.
Robin, do we have a second?
Steve, second.
Steve, second. Roll call.
Brad Waldorf,
Yes.
Jill Winling,
Yes.
Jane Willenberg, Kathleen Smith, yes. Steve Bone,
Yes.
Angie Byers,
Yes.
Robin Klosterman.
Yes.
Okay, so we will go ahead and move on. Are we moving on to the financial report?
Yes,
We good? Okay. Just checking.
thank you.
Hey, Mr. Fox?
Okay, last month we saw a net fund balance, $29,521,591.21. Operating funds made up $20,158,255.95. Of the total, HLS funds are $6,491,357.37. And those are listed out, starting on page 5 of your packet. Revenues received in the education fund, listed out on page 14. Locally, we received $206,852.22. From state, we received $595,277.58. And from the federal government, we received $58,274.79. Expenses over $5,000 are listed out separately, beginning on page 15. Recommendations this month would be to reimburse the interest account for $1,271.50, listed out on page 18, and the payment of bills in the amount of $671,888.38. Of that, HLS work at the junior high made up $40,724.30, and those are listed out beginning on page 20.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Fox regarding the financial?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
On the credit card statement for McAllister's, $605 staff lunch.
That was the Monday where we brought the staff in. The school, each building was told to have their building catered for lunch that day, to support the local restaurants and to feed the staff. And so I'm not sure, does it say which building that was on there?
I think it's a junior high.
The idea was, that was the day before we had a teachers institute. We canceled that Monday. So we didn't have any plans, and we knew that things were going to get shut down. So what I told the principals is go ahead and I just told them, go ahead and order lunch for staff and let's support our local businesses. So,
Some were neighbors.
Yeah.
and-
Right.
yeah.
Right.
so that was,
We're not on the credit card.
What it was is some restaurants will allow us to use a purchase order. We have a history of charging with them. Some won't. And so McAllister's had to go on the credit card that day because they don't have a history of allowing us to charge.
I had asked you once about some of these mileage expenses that we were paying for mail pickup. and you were going to look into maybe coming up with an alternate plan. Did you ever, I know that the year ended early, but this started like in December. So did you ever come up with a plan? For those of you that don't know what I'm referring to, I was concerned because we pay mileage for someone from each building to come to the board office to pick up mail every day from all 5 buildings. So I just thought that there must be a better way than to pay 5 different individuals every day to come here and pick up mail.
I have looked into that. I looked at several different things. I looked at having our warehouse person make the rounds. However, to make the rounds, to hit every building, pick it all up, come here, sort it all out, and make all the rounds back was approximately an hour. The warehouse person really doesn't have an hour to give up. So then I looked at our new transportation assistant director. Do I have her come in an hour earlier, have her do that? But then what I came up with was the cost to us to pay her for an extra hour every day of the year was actually more than what we were spending annually in mileage.
And what are we spending annually in mileage?
It's a little under $1,800 a year in mileage to do that. So that was not a viable option. So then I started looking at, can we have one building pick up for 2 buildings? Maybe the junior high does the high school, Central does ELC, Southside's on their own. So then we only have 3 trips of mileage. But I started getting a lot of lashback from the people who currently do those roles, who are collecting a mileage check and depend on it. So at that point, I am going to work with you as the board to talk about what you want me to do there, because at that point it becomes an issue of what, do you want to make a change? What are you comfortable with? Do we have the junior high do one week, the high school does the next week for both those buildings? But you have people who feel that that's a job they've been doing for several years, collecting that mileage. Now we're taking money away from them. So I wanted to have that discussion with the board at that point. So
They shouldn't be making money on mileage. That should just pay for their gas and their expenses in their car. No one should make money on mileage.
I don't know that they said they were making it. They just said they count on those checks. So I don't want it to be that I'm saying they said they made money, but they said they were counting on the checks. And so I'm open to whatever you want us to do and put in place, but those are so having the warehouse do it, she was losing too much time. Having our assistant transportation director do it was going to cost us more. So really it comes down to having buildings collect for each other and deliver it that way. So the junior high and high school work together and figure that out. Central picks up ELCs on the way by, whatever.
Well, I can tell, this is something obviously that a lot of these board members didn't even know about, because from the looks on a couple of their faces, this is the first time they've heard about it. So I think it'd just be better if this is something that we did try to talk about and come up with an idea before school starts next fall. So it doesn't have to be tonight.
I would like to say something in regards to that. Is that because I have been in that position as one of those people who actually did that running. And because you have such a huge amount of money that comes in from fundraising and different things, if that were still me in that position, I would have a really hard time sending the money that I had collected with someone else to deposit, because ultimately in the end, those people who are taking that are responsible for it. So I would think that some of those things we need to definitely think about when we're talking about sending one person to do everything, because you could be talking, $30,000.
I'm confused.
I'm a little confused.
She's talking about $30,000.
Spending deposits also.
Yeah, she's talking about if they were transporting money to the board office from a fundraiser that they collected in the building, that she's saying they could be carrying a lot of cash. And so they would rather personally bring the cash than have a mail runner take the cash, I think was the
we were
point.
talking about picking up mail here
That's
and
what I
distributing
thought.
it to the other location.
Well, what
Now
happens
we're
is
talking
we have
deposits.
interdepartment mail. So,
Okay.
Somebody at Central needs to get something to somebody at the high school. They put it in their interdepartment envelope, that person's name, it's brought here, sorted out in mailboxes here. And then the high school person comes here, picks up everything from their mailbox, sorts what they have into the mailboxes, and we run it that way. That's how it's been done. So,
And that's every day?
That's every day, yeah.
Then
Where's
does it
the
have to-
cash
does it have to
flow
be every
goes
day?
though? I'm sure.
Yeah,
that's
there's
the-
things every
That's
day.
very much spaced out probably, and we've got principals coming to the board office for stuff regularly that could bring money if that transportation was, and safety and security was the issue. But again, I just think it's an issue, a bigger issue to talk about, and tonight we probably isn't the time.
Okay, were there any other questions then regarding the financial report?
Mark, is that your radio plan?
In there.
I'll try.
I can just hear it. I wasn't sure if
Are we
anybody
good,
else.
Kathleen?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so we would need a motion to reimburse the interest account in the amount of $1,271.50, and the payment of bills in the amount of $671,888.38.
I'll make that motion.
Brad,
Motion by Brad, we have a second.
I'll second it.
Second Kathleen, roll call.
Jill Winley,
Yes.
Jane Willenberg.
Yes.
Kathleen Smith, yes. Steve Bone.
Yes.
Angie Byers,
Yes.
Robin Klosterman.
Yes.
Brad Waldorf.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, pretty short. We had the minutes from the March 23rd board meeting and an April 6th meeting. And that's it for that one. So we can get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Robin,
Motion by Robin, do we have a second?
Second.
second by Steve.
Second by Steve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. We have a couple of correspondence here. One is, thank you for the garden stone in memory of Steve's mother. We also have appreciated the kind words and prayers during the stressful time from board member Robin and her husband, Steve Klosterman. We also had a letter from the Shumway Fire Department District written out to Jason on behalf of the officers and the rest of the volunteer firefighters of the Shumway Fire Protection District. We would like to thank you for supporting in providing us a place to train on February 24th, 2020. We allowed them to use our facilities. And then we have a letter from Linda Richards. Mr. Doan, all administrators, and the entire Unit 40 school board, thank you for all the extra hours of hard work, planning, and making tough decisions to ensure that our children, students, and staff alike are healthy and safe throughout this crisis. I know it cannot be an easy job for you, but I commend all of you for your quick and constant communications to all of us through this incredibly unpredictable time. I also would like to thank you for the lunch provided to us today. It was not necessary, but was such a thoughtful gesture. I just want you to know I appreciate it. Linda Richards. I'm assuming she's talking about the meal that we just discussed a few minutes ago. So we're going to go ahead and move on now to the bus bids. Mr. Fox, are you going to talk about that?
Yes, I'll do
Okay.
that. So we, this has been a long ordeal. We had the issue where the buses didn't get ordered when we ordered them and so on. We were able to get, it worked out to where we could put them out for bid, and then COVID-19 strikes, right? But one of the districts that has bought from us for the last several years, Hudsonville School District, did give us a bid on 2 buses. Bus number 4 in the amount of $36,501, and bus number 7 in the amount of $33,501. These were above the trade-in values and made it worth our time to do this. That puts us a little over $5,000 more than we would have got if we would have just traded it in. So well worth the time that we put into putting the notice in the paper and putting it together. So we would ask for approval to sell bus 4 and bus 7 to Hudsonville for these prices, and then to go ahead and trade in bus 3, 19, 23, 41, and 43 to Midbus Bus Sales as negotiated out previously.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Okay, and hearing none, we would need a motion and a second to approve Hudsonville The bus bids for bus number 4 in the amount of $36,501 and bus number 7 for $33,501.
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Kane?
Second.
We have
Robin.
second, Robin. Roll call?
Jane Willenberg.
Yes.
Kathleen Smith, yes. Steve Bone.
Yes.
Angie Byers.
Yes.
Robin Klosterman.
Yes.
Brad Waldoff.
Yes.
Jill Winley.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on to project updates.
Junior high project, when we were originally just closed for a month, we identified some areas that we could knock out during that time. We talked to the PE teachers. They graciously said, if we do get to come back, we don't need the locker room. So we bagged and tagged everything in every PE locker, student name, student number, all that. That was an enjoyable 3 days for me. But we got that done. Those locker rooms have been completely gutted, and they're starting back on rebuilding those. If you've ever been in those locker rooms, there were not offices in there. They were not a very nice locker room for anybody. We will now have offices in those locker rooms for the coaches, nice usable lockers that aren't on those high benches that were 3 foot off the ground. So that's being done, it's already started. The breezeway, the asbestos abatement is completed in the breezeway. They took down the entire ceiling in the breezeway and abated the water pipes running across there, got the asbestos off of the insulation off of those. So that is done. What you'll see there next is they'll be tearing up the ground to replace the storm sewer that runs through there before they build a classroom in there. So all that is starting to roll now. The cafeteria floor has a very small section in the corner that needs to be finished, and the cafeteria floor will be completely down with the new MCT tile. Looks awesome. They did great things with the colors down there, so it's bright. It's very open. The new lighting down there made a huge difference with the new floor. So let's see what else. I want to compliment the teachers on the second floor, original part of the building, which would be the social studies teachers, the art teacher, and the science teachers. Social studies and came in, got their rooms done. Art came in. If you've ever been in an art room, it's controlled chaos. All right. She came in, she and Kevin, and got it packed up. But I really want to pat the science teachers on the back because they came in, did not only their classrooms, but also 2 full labs. And they got it done in 1 day, packed up, and it was moved by the custodial group. All that stuff in that upper floor is gone, moved out, and demolition has started. We're doing demolition this week. Asbestos abatement will start next week in that area.
Is the server room gone on the second floor now?
Server room is still sitting there. However, it is going into one of the ventilation closets down by the gym. So because the steam boilers, and that's another thing being taken out right now, because they're being removed, that closet will become a big empty room. It's going to be 15 by 20. So we're going to move the server closet into there. There's really no other use for that room. Perfect for the server closet. So, so all this is running now. I have a meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning with all the subcontractors and Petker Construction, who's our managing company on it. And we'll get the whole thing rolling because, we want to manage it to where we can start a lot of these processes, but we have to keep the building in a shape right now where teachers can come in, still get into their classrooms. If they're not being affected on that second floor, they can access what they need. They can use the bathroom, those kind of things. So there's a lot of things we have to make sure stay in place at least for another month until the normal school year is over. So we can get started, but we can't go full bore into tearing things apart. So, so the junior high is up and rolling. Any questions on the junior high before I move on to the next one? No? Okay. Southside project, originally we wanted to do open bids on that on the 14th of April. We had a pre-bid meeting on the 7th of April. I think it was around the 7th. Nobody showed up, which was concerning to me and our architect because when nobody shows up to a pre-bid, you start wondering if you're going to get any bids or if you're going to get one bid. So I reached out to the local carpenters union, not local, but downstate carpenters union. Our architect reached out to a lot of flooring companies. And so now we have 7 or 8 companies who have shown us interest. As we started working on this, we identified some issues in a couple of the bathrooms where the urinals are built into the floor. And my concern is I've had a lot of maintenance tickets on those urinals the last couple of years. And we're putting a resin flooring in the bathrooms. So I'm a little concerned that we're going to go ahead and do resin flooring around those. And then we're going to have to cut them out because of a plumbing issue. So I've asked the architect to make it a alternate bid to take those out of the floor and hang them on the wall. That'll allow us, if we like the bid price, to accept it. If not, we do the work that we want to do, and we take the gamble that maybe it won't break down. Okay. So those are some of the things that have happened. The bids are due this Thursday. We'll be opening those, and then hopefully we can have a special board meeting before too long where we can accept those bids and get that process started. Because of all this that's going on, we're a little behind getting that done. And I think that's why we didn't get a lot of interest early on. But after we called people, they took a look at what the job is, then they started being more interested. So, okay. Any questions on South Side? Okay. Hearth Rock Cafe blind, that's more of an easier project. The blinds in the cafeteria are 22 years old. The motors in them have stopped working in a couple of them. The blind's actually broken one. It's been hanging down the whole year. We've been working with Right at Home Interiors. We talked to several different companies. Nobody really wanted to touch it. Right at Home Interiors said, absolutely, we'll help you out. We're local, you're local. So they came in. They gave us, there's 7 windows in there. So they gave us a price on the 7 windows, which was just a little over $5,000. What we want to look at is also the big windows above the front doors. There's a huge window up there. Anytime we do a matinee or any kind of presentation during the day, you can't see, when you turn out the lights, it's still as bright as can be. So what we'd like to do is put one big blind there, motorized, that when we have those things, is right now, when we do plays or musicals, we go in and we hang black plastic. And it's up for a couple of weeks because maintenance goes in and hangs it. And then whenever they get a chance, they come back and take it down. So I think the total price of the big blind was like, do you remember? It's like $1,300. I didn't put it on the notes here. $1,300 for that big blind. In my mind, that's money well spent because that's not time being wasted every year, every event to hang black plastic. And if it lasts 22 years, like the current blinds have, we're in pretty good shape. So when I brought it up to Buildings and Grounds Committee, the idea was we would go ahead and move forward with this, do all the blinds, but wanted to bring it to the board to let everybody know that that was the direction we were looking at going. Is all 7 windows and the big window above the door.
Makes sense.
And then the last thing I have here to talk about is we were going to bring next fiscal year, so FY21 to the board. The T4, the green maintenance truck we have is a 1998. Those of you, I think everybody was on the board when we bought the last new one. It was a 98 and the transmission went out on it, the old T1. So the transmission on T4 is about shot and the drivetrain on T4 is about shot. So we're getting close to where on T1, the inspector said it will never pass again. T4, he said you might get another year. So that's why we were trying to get to FY21. Due to our current situation, what I've found is we're not buying diesel, we're not buying gas near at the rate we normally do. And so the transportation fund is not going to see the expenses that we originally thought. Likewise, we built into the transportation fund an extra $40,000 for vehicle replacement. We do that because in the past we've had situations where a driver's ed van gets hit by somebody else. Well, it gets totaled. Insurance gives us $10,000, but to buy a new one is $27,000. And so we build in every year about $40,000 in vehicle costs just in case. Where we're at right now, we can replace T4 on this year's budget and not have to worry about exceeding what we budgeted for the year. And so what I would like to talk to you about is instead of buying just a general work truck is to buy a used bucket truck that will allow us to do our tree trimming, our awning painting, our light bulb changing in parking lots, even putting filters on the roofs of buildings. Right now, we put a box on the ground, go up on the roof, throw a rope down, and then try to pull them up the side. This would allow us to pull up, take the lift up, put the filters on the building, be a lot safer. We are renting lifts right now, outdoor lifts, or borrowing bucket trucks when we can. This would replace T4 completely, and then be part of the maintenance fleet. What I would like to do is have you approve for me to move forward with it, find the right vehicle, and then sometime in the next couple of meetings, bring to you the right vehicle and ask you to purchase it once I have an exact dollar amount. I've talked to a couple of local dealers. They do have other dealers they work with on bucket trucks to find them. And so they've sent me a few. I put in here, it would not exceed $50,000. The ones that I've looked at so far have not been close to that, and all been within that 60,000 miles, which we don't put a lot of miles on our trucks because we drive them just in town. That's why a 98 lasts us to 2020, is because we don't put a lot of miles on. I would not put a snowplow on this. Our current snowplow fleet, we have enough with snowplows. Plus, we put a snowplow on the UTV we bought a couple of years ago, and that does all of our sidewalks. So I would not have to worry about the transmission being torn up in this, because that's what we do. We tear transmissions with snowplows. So this truck should last us longer anyway, because we wouldn't do that. So I would just ask for direction to be able to go ahead and pursue that and see what we come up with.
The committee, this was brought to the committee too,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Is there any issue with moving forward with that in that direction?
No.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I guess, are we ready to go ahead and move on to the food purchasing co-op?
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to talk?
Do we
Okay.
have to vote on that?
No, he just getting the direction, and then once he gets the number, he'll bring it back.
When I bring you the actual truck,
Okay.
I'll ask you to approve it. SEPCO food purchasing, every year the district participates in this. Actually, Denise Anderson is the lead on this. And what she does is she puts out bids for all the school districts who join the co-op. And she's not gotten a chance to do her presentation on the food service that she has ready. But hopefully we'll at some point in time get to do that. When she does that, you're going to find out that being a member of the SEPCO food co-op saves us thousands and thousands of dollars. There's a whole separate price sheet for members of this co-op versus what other schools pay. And it's a huge difference. So to cost us $100 to be a part of it is a huge savings for us.
Okay, do we have any questions? And hearing none, we need a motion and a second to approve the Unit Police participation in SEPCO food co-op at a cost of $100.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Kathleen. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Robin.
Second, Robin. Roll call.
Kathleen Smith, yes. Steve Bone.
Yes.
Angie Byers.
Yes.
Robin Klosterman.
Yes.
Brad Waldoff.
Yes.
Jill Winling.
Yes.
Jane Willenberg.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to the fee schedule for the 2020-2021 school year.
I'll talk about that. Basically, we're proposing no changes in all the fees. However, back for the Free Kids Act of 2010, the district did approve annual increases in lunch and breakfast, so we can make sure we continue to get federal reimbursement in that program. So you see, those are the only things that have changed. Everything else would stay the same. So I put that forward for approval.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 fee list for Unit 40?
I'll make that motion.
Steve.
Motion by Steve, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Brad.
Second by Brad. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Moving on to the student information system, I think we were gonna table that for discussion, at a later time with the tech committee.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on to the injury insurance renewal.
Okay. Each year, the district is required to carry catastrophic insurance on student athletes. That has been through first agency since FY17, so the 16-17 school year. It has been at the exact same price since the 16-17 school year. We've been pretty fortunate in what we've, incidents that we've not had. So that price did not change again for this coming year. So just ask that you approve for $1,390 to use first agency for our catastrophic insurance.
Have we also gotten it all of those years from the same agency as well?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay, any questions?
No.
Okay, and hearing none, we'll need a motion to approve the purchase of catastrophic insurance from First Agency at a cost of $1,390 for the fiscal year 2021.
I'll make that motion.
Motion Kathleen, do we have a second? I'll second that one. Roll call?
Steve Bone.
Yes.
Angie Byers.
Yes.
Robin Klosterman.
Yes.
Brad Waldoff.
Yes.
Jill Winling.
Yes.
Jane Willenberg. Kathleen Smith, yes.
Moving on to the EHS Science Department textbook purchases.
Shelley Beck has been working with the science department most through late fall and into the winter, and followed through with since we've been under closure. Put before you recommendations in regards to EHS Science Department textbook purchases. These will be purchased now for next year. You can see their anatomy and physiology, physics, chemistry 1, and physical science. The totals of those, and from different, obviously different groups or publishers, but the total on that would be $32,281.25. And so each of those quotes are in the packet as well. So we'd ask for a motion to approve those so we can go ahead and get those ordered.
I'll make that motion.
First, Robin.
I'll second.
Okay.
Jill.
Jill, roll call?
Angie Byers.
Yes.
Robin Klosterman.
Yes.
Brad Waldoff.
Yes.
Jill Winling.
Yes.
Jane Willenberg.
Yes.
Kathleen Smith, yes. Steve Bone.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to the IESA and IHSA membership renewal.
Yes, every year annually, the district renews its memberships. IHSA fees are waived. IE, which is elementary, those fees come to $1,175. So we're recommending to approve the district's annual membership in both the IHSA and IESA for 2020, 2021.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion Kathleen, second.
I'll second.
Robin.
Roll call?
Robin Klosterman.
Yes.
Brad Waldoff.
Yes.
Jill Winling.
Yes.
Jane Willenberg. Kathleen Smith, yes. Steve Bone. Angie Byers.
Yes. Okay. The 2020-2021 calendar.
Yeah, we've been working with the ECTA, and then obviously the closure kind of came and kind of slowed everything down. However, very positive feedback on a change for this coming year. Because we're starting August 24th, and I still think we'll need that time. Maybe if you heard the reports earlier, please don't think that we could start August 17th, so or earlier. So I put that in the packet. Because we're starting later, that means parent-teacher conferences fall later into November. They're usually at the end of October on a regular year. And hopefully our goal is that we can have a regular year next 2021-22 on the calendar. But working with the ECTA, handling that week in November of having 2 night parent-teacher conferences instead of one at night and one from 8 to 12 the next day. It's something to try a little bit different to see if it works. I think obviously Veterans Day is in the middle of that week, and that kind of messes that week up. So thought we'd try that this year, see how it goes. Obviously with Veterans Day moving, it won't be the same next year. But to see, I just want to make sure everybody understands. If a parent can't meet the times that we have, we ask that our staff does a great job of reaching out and holding those meetings at other times. So it's not just at night, okay? But what we're trying to do is to meet some of that need at night, and then also something different, see if it works. If it doesn't, then we'll change. But it's something that both the ECTA and administration thought that we'd try it and see how it worked. Now, I want to say one thing. This is as of today. Okay. All right. So if we approve it, that's fine. I'll put it in there, but
Subject to change.
who knows, right? So, but I wanted to make sure because I'm still waiting on some guidance about this year's calendar and how that, and I don't know how that's going to, hopefully we won't have any issues, but just want to make sure.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 Unit 40 calendar?
I'll make that motion.
Brad.
Motion by Brad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Kathleen. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Moving on to the opportunity for sharing by the board.
Before we do that, we've got a couple items to talk about.
Oh, sorry.
First, Mr. Roberts is here. Been a lot of questions about graduation and prom. One of the things that I've learned through this whole process is sometimes you need to make quick decisions, and sometimes that you make a decision and it changes. So we made the decision, obviously, to postpone graduation from May 31st and hopefully in the future. So we've also, Kurt's done a lot of work, background work. The governor came out with some more information on Friday, but I wanted him to just kind of share with where we're at, where he's at, what we're thinking. And then obviously, as we move forward, we bring more of a plan back to the board, but just kind of give an update on that. So.
Okay, so in the best of situations, none of us can predict the future to 100% accuracy, and we're not in the best of situations at this point. So really, as far as, I'll speak to graduation first, and Mr. Dunn and I have talked, I've also talked with a number of other principals from other schools within the conference and out of the conference as to what they're planning, what they're doing. Right now, where we stand is we are hoping to be able to have a traditional graduation ceremony. That's what we would like to provide for all of our seniors. And what I mean by that is everybody's in the gym and just like it's always looked better because now we have air conditioning. However, I think we have to plan for the contingency that might not be the case. So what we would like to do at this point is at some point or another, and a lot of schools have done this in the area, is to pick a date. Okay, and that date's going to be after May 31st. And there's just no way we're going to be able to put it in at that time. From that, basically, with the idea that we try to pick a date where we're most likely to be able to have a traditional ceremony. If that can't happen, we've got to have a backup. We really feel like, and at first we talked about doing something that's like completely just online. I really feel like we need to do something. There's several things to consider for this. So one of the things that I've looked at is possibly, and there are other schools that are doing this or planning this, is it's kind of a drive-up ceremony. And what I looked at is being able to stage people in their cars in our student parking lot and basically do a ceremony. If we could do it outside, we could do it in front of the gymnasium, where parents and their students kind of drive up in their car. They have this opportunity to pick up a diploma, and we try to hang on to as many of the traditions as possible. I haven't contacted them yet, but I am contacting our class speakers with the idea of we're going to try to figure out a way to get them videotaped and possibly post that so people can be viewing that ahead of time. With that, that would kind of be a contingency or backup plan. Please understand that we're also trying to do other stuff right now for our seniors. You're probably not aware, they picked up their cap and gown on Friday, and they were handed a poster that we had made for them, and there was Mrs. Hinkle was instrumental in this, and there is instructions on it to actually decorate their front door, their front window, possibly their cap and gown or some other way, get a picture, email it to her. We're gonna try to get those posted out there. We're looking, Mr. Father is working on basically a slideshow type of movie that honors each one of our graduates at this point. So there are other things that we're trying to do, but that's where we're at in the planning process with graduation. And I'm sitting down and counting parking spaces, and how many we would possibly need and how to get them lined up and along those lines. I don't, not everything's worked out to that, but I feel like that if we're not able to have that traditional ceremony, that's about as close as we're gonna be able to get to. Questions about graduation and the plan in that regard?
Real quick, probably looking near the end of July, correct?
We do know, and I'm just gonna put this out there, we do know that in some cases, students are gonna be gone and not be able to participate. And so that's just kind of where we're gonna try to put this in the best possible way we can. Okay, prom. So prom's a little bit different animal. And so obviously May 2nd is out. I haven't made that announcement that May 2nd is out. I think that assumption is there. A lot of that comes down to, we haven't made a full decision of what we do. I have talked to some community members with the possibility of a community group doing something for our seniors during the summer. We are also talking with the prom sponsor. They've been talking with the convention center right now and possibly doing an alternative date for prom. My biggest concern with doing an alternative date for prom is this, and maybe this isn't a big concern, but if we do an alternative date, let's say that we pick July 17th, okay? And by the way, if we do prom with the convention center, it's gonna have to be on a Friday. There are no Saturdays available. As soon as they start putting those out there, they're gonna be doing weddings. And evidently nobody does a wedding on Friday night. So if we do pick a date, one of my concerns is that we will have people who maybe have not gone to the expense of prom yet. They will go ahead and go to that expense of prom, and then we still cannot have it. That would be a concern that I have. Now, maybe there are those people who have already gone to that expense. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how big a concern it is, but I would not want to put people in a position to be able to say, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and have prom. Then go ahead and put that money out there, because I have daughters and I know they're not that old yet, but I know it's gonna be expensive, right? And then whenever we turn around and cancel it. So one of the things that they're out that money. So one of the things that we're looking at is the possibility, again, like I said, I kind of talked to some community members with the idea of doing something that's kind of an alternative prom for our seniors in the summer. So there's no real definitive answers as to what we're looking at right now. We're still trying to figure out if we're able to get a DJ, if we're actually able to put it, there's a lot of things to consider. How are we gonna sell tickets? How are we gonna handle guests? Because those are all things that are handled when students are in the building. How are we gonna make sure that it's only Effingham High School students that show up? Those are all things. They're all things we can work out. I'm not worried about that, but those are all considerations that we have at this point.
I think one of the things that, just to be upfront about is, picking that date, whether it's graduation or prom, and that date doesn't work, but that's the date, and we come up with an alternative for that, rather than continually moving it down. So that's what we talked about. Just want to make sure what the feedback is on that, because it's very hard for him and his staff to plan and then move it out another month. So, which is unfortunate. Nobody knows where we're going to be at the end of July. We hope we're in a better place, but I don't think anybody can sit here and say that. We want to have something for the kids.
Yeah.
So that's the thought, at least our thought process would, we set that date in July or whenever that is, that's the date we're shooting for. So that's something to think about. And we would bring in information back once we get a little bit more information to settle and make sure the board's aware and okay with what we're doing, obviously.
I think it's gonna be hard to have prom school-sponsored post end of school year.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Mr. Roberts has shared that concern.
I mean, it's almost gonna have to be thrown into community's court, in my opinion. I don't know. without analyzing it totally, and I hate that. It's sad. Everything's sad.
Not that we couldn't play a role and
Right,
couldn't
that's
support.
what I was
Couldn't
gonna say. When I
support
talk to,
it,
when I
but-
talk to the
Could
community
you move
members,
your microphone first towards you? Someone texted me that they can. Okay.
some people would love not to hear me. So when I talk to community members about this, and there's nothing said, they were going to go back and talk to other people, and we've not touched base again. One of the things that I said that exactly what you're talking about, if you guys choose to do this as a role, the school can't take an official role, but I personally can volunteer a lot of time and hours. I can personally have a school say, hey, you know what, we can probably help financially support some of this in some way. We can make a donation to this from a school standpoint without necessarily coming and basically saying we're the one that's putting it on or we're the ones that are sponsoring it. So, you know, those are definitely considerations.
Tough decision.
It is.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay. So the other item is, we need to talk about EHS grading. And I needed to read this letter from earlier, and then I gave you some information and we'll have a discussion. This email came in today, and it's from Jody Weymouth. And I'll just read it here. Mr. Doan, I'd like to submit the following to reread tonight's board meeting. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate your tireless work during these crazy times. My name is Jody Weymouth, and I am a district parent and Unit 40 employee. I wish I could be at tonight's board meeting as I have a unique perspective on grading structure and how many things are impacted by student GPA on a high school level. As of last week, the administration was recommending EHS use a simple pass incomplete system for the entire semester. Quarter 3 grades already achieved would be omitted from GPA, and students will either get a pass or an incomplete for the entire semester. What this means is that our students will only have 7 semesters on their overall GPA, whereas many other schools will still have 8. We need to consider how this would do harm to some of our EHS students. It goes without saying that all high school students across our state and nation will be impacted by this pandemic. That being said, the Illinois State Board of Education has not given crystal clear direction on how Illinois schools should handle grades for the current semester, so it will not be consistent across the board. What you will need to know is that many Illinois schools, including several from our immediate area, are in fact allowing students to finish quarter 4 with a grade equal to or better than that of quarter 3. By not using the same grading model at EHS, we are putting our students at a disadvantage against other students, area students. Note, no student's grade can be harmed under this system. The use of F, a fail, is not in place during remote learning. Going strictly pass incomplete and discounting quarter 3 grades would be detrimental to some students who have had a successful quarter 3. If we do not allow our students to finish quarter 4 the same as or better than quarter 3, it would in fact harm some GPAs. EHS quarter 3 was complete and final. Quarter 3 grades have been posted. We cannot possibly discount quarter 3 grades altogether. Not allowing kids to achieve a letter grade, same as or better than previous quarter during the quarter 4 remote learning actually penalizes some. By not giving them the opportunity to achieve a letter grade during remote learning, it totally discounts any amount of work they're doing at this time. Again, no student's grades would be harmed, and those unable to complete 4th quarter successfully through remote learning will still receive an incomplete and have the chance to make up work at a later date. No one can fail, even if they don't have the resources to succeed with remote learning. Students' GPA impact a huge amount of critical things like scholarship opportunities, auto insurance discounts, and more, when many other schools are including this semester in their GPAs. It leaves some EHS students who performed well at a disadvantage when held up to their peers from other schools. It clouds the playing field for those things like scholarships, college admissions, and club or award qualifications. Because ISP has made it universal throughout our state, we must choose the avenue which provides the most opportunity for success while still penalizing no one. When factoring grades at Effingham High School for current semester, we must allow students to use their quarter 3 grade as baseline, allowing them to achieve a grade during quarter 4. Thank you very much for your consideration on this matter and for advocating for every single EHS student. So, just a little bit of background. I sent you some information just from, I think Jody did as well. When this all started back in March, and I added what I handed out tonight was just some additional information on the last page 4 or 5. We've taken great length and studied this. We've taken recommendation from the State Board of Education. When this started, 318, they put out from the ISBE that student work during the mandated closure, the bottom line is must not negatively impact a student's grade or otherwise impact a student's academic standing. That was back in March 18th. The quote in here, I think, was, "Our goal is that no student is negatively impacted by the closure and that no school district policies or procedures should widen the equity gap." So on March 31st, in a letter to parents, one of the bullet points in there was the overall goal of remote learning, and then also talking about emphasis for schoolwork assigned, reviewed, and completed will be based upon learning, not compliance. There will be no educational harm to any student, no negative impact on students. At that time, from what the state board had put out, the district will use a pass and complete system. The letter grades will be used, but feedback on work will be provided. If an incomplete is given, then work can be made up when the remote learning period ends. There are two sides to this story, right? There's the situation of a student from what was presented here is that a student gets a third quarter grade, does work, and somehow earns a fourth quarter grade. However, we're not giving letter grades, so really the only way to enable that or make a decision on that is engagement. Is the student engaged or not? Okay, so there's always the other side to this is what happens to the student. I think I sent out roughly 65% of students to high school are engaged. That's I'm not hard number. Would you say that's a hard number?
That's a real hard number to narrow down. I'm just going to tell you right now.
But I mean,
that's not a hard number.
That means 35% are not at this point, roughly. So student A does everything on remote learning. Student B does not, for items that could be because they don't do anything, but there could be items that we don't have any control over or they don't have any control over, whether that be internet access, all sorts of items. So if student A does increase their grade and student B cannot, that's different than does not, cannot, then student B is going to be negatively affected if we're using GPA. So I don't know, when all this started, obviously nobody had gone through this. And so we were looking, and I was looking out at trying to find what are other people doing. So in our own Apollo conference, we have two sides, and Kurt followed up with the principals as well. So I'll let you talk about just what in our conference, we have some that are using grades. And
So
we have some that
I
aren't.
know, let's see, I'm not going to know Lincoln and I'm not going to know Matt Toon because those two weren't at the meeting. I think you talked maybe with Muhammad. So Taylorville is basically flat out came out and said, we're doing pass incomplete. That's the decision that they have made. I think you said, did you say Muhammad was doing pass incomplete? Mount Zion has basically, their process is that they allow students to, if they're okay with their third quarter grade, then they're pretty well done. And if they want to improve their third quarter grade, then they can do optional assignments to improve their third quarter grade. So that's how they're handling that. I think that's all, right? Oh, Charleston. I don't know the details of theirs. I know Charleston is doing something with grades. I don't know the detail. He didn't really explain the details of it. They're just doing those grades. So that's kind of where we're at. It's a little bit all over. I think that's what you're going to find everywhere. I will say that right now, and I'm just putting it, I see there's a lot of different ways to look at this thing. But I will say right now that of the things that are out there, the multiple things that school districts are doing, the one that's consistent is the pass incomplete. And that is what ISBE has recommended. is that we do. But they did put in a caveat that if we wanted to, we could do X, Y, and Z as well.
So the question is, there's a couple questions, because one, if you do take the third quarter grade and allow them to try to improve that grade, what's the basis for improvement? And is that 1-letter grade? Is it 2-letter grades? Can I go from a B to an A? Can I go from a C to an A? Can I only go from a C to there? And then how do we administer that? That's one of the questions. And I think Kirk, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but we see both sides to this, but I'll just be honest with you, we erred on the side of the state board recommendation. That booklet, 65 different people came together, and different districts are doing different things. They say, this is what we recommend, but then 2 paragraphs down, they say, here, you can do this as well, right? So that's kind of where we're at. Is it, one of the things about hurting on scholarships and things like that, I would hope that those individuals or those groups that are doing scholarships understand the situation that we're all in and the students are in, that they would have some flexibility. I don't know. But I guess we're kind of putting it out there. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on the process.
It's just kind of tough. In the end, I certainly understand the standpoint of, a student has put in a lot of work third quarter. And if they're having a good third quarter, you certainly see this as, well, there's a loss to that student, but we also look at the idea that no student is going to lose from where they were at the beginning of the semester. So GPAs are not going to change, and they're not going to change anywhere among any of our students. So in other words, it's not going to affect a class rank because one student may have had an opportunity that another one didn't. One of the things that we've done with the staff, or I've talked to the staff a lot, is, we've got to change the way we think in the middle of this thing. And one of those things we've got to change is the fact that when a student comes into our classroom, there are certain variables we don't control. I mean, we just can't. We are in a realm where there's so many variables right now that we can't control as an educator, that it's really kind of hard to turn around and say that every kid is getting the absolute same equal. We're doing the best that we can to do that, and we're trying to compensate for some of these things that we can. I mean, I'm taking things to kids, I'm taking them to their homes. So we're trying to do the best we can with that, but we really can't account for. We've got students who are not doing anything online. They're collecting packets every day. We have no idea how well those students are doing at this point. So we are not able to really provide them with a lot of feedback because those kids don't have the opportunity to be online, and we don't have them in person. So there's so many variables here. It's really kind of hard for us to look at this in a normal way, I guess is what I'm saying.
Parents have thoughts when it comes to grades. And I think just one comment I'll make about the scholarship reference. For seniors, scholarships are typically going to be awarded on 7 semesters of grades. The last semester of their senior year doesn't come into play because it hasn't happened yet where most scholarships are awarded. So that really is not going to negatively impact students if they're a senior, because those decisions have been made. As Kurt was talking about, just all of the variables going on, and for me to think that we actually could consider that some students could work in some courses to improve their grade is just mind-boggling, because of, first of all the courses that we have. And a lot of our courses are hands-on courses, or they require something very specialized. Like, let's say you're in graphic arts. Do you have the software you need at home that you can really work on? No, you don't. So, or you're in the metal shop, I mean, how do you, chemistry lab, how do you let kids improve in those areas? So to me, it just widens the equity gap. I mean, we already have this digital divide because we have kids that don't have any access or devices perhaps. And then we have kids that have everything. And so remote learning isn't equal to start with for these kids. Some kids are paper and pencil, as Kurt said, a lot of them. And so I think now to, add this grading component into it just widens that equity gap, that divide. And I think that is, in this time of stress, is just not the way to go. I like the pass incomplete or pass complete incomplete kind of thing.
So feedback is not being presented to the kids as a grade, is it just?
So in a couple of different ways. So one of the feedbacks we're looking at right now, and we're working those, and this will be in a grade book for a parent to see, is if a student is completing something, they're getting a 1. If they're not completing something, they're getting a 0. And so, and just in some regards, keeping an eye and really just keeping track of turning stuff in is a challenge right now. So we're trying to simplify that for parents as much as possible. Individual feedback is coming from each individual teacher then as they're looking at student work and they're interacting with that student and saying, hey, why don't you try to redo this again because you didn't quite get this right. Let me show you what you need to do. So that's where they're getting that feedback. It's not really coming in the form of a grade.
It's not coming in the form of homework, grades,
Right. It's not coming.
From a parent perspective, my kids are doing their work, emailing it to the teacher, and the teacher sends an email back. Recheck number 12, or what were you thinking on number 12? And then they have a conversation there. Or teachers are having a Zoom meeting at 1 o'clock every other day. And if you had a question or you missed something, you log into the Zoom meeting, and there's a chance for the teacher to talk you through it and even show you on a board how to work the problem. So that's kind of what
So
I'm
they're not
saying.
really grading right now, though. I mean, in a traditional sense.
Really, the way that I've kind of put this out to my teachers right now, and this is a lot of guided practice, right? So if you look at a Madeline Hunter, you don't use that term much anymore, but if you use a Madeline Hunter mindset, that there's a model to teaching, right? And part of that model is a guided practice where you're actually working. The teacher models what they need to do, and then the student actually starts working under the guidance of a teacher. It's just that if it's in the classroom, that teacher is actually able to be around the classroom. Now there's some lag in communication because they're submitting that and then getting that back and trying to get, and sometimes the teachers are giving feedback to a whole class as a whole. They see that a lot of the class members are struggling with something. But again, our students who are not able to be online right now, they're having to wait for that feedback because that paperwork hasn't come in. Yeah. And that's kind of definitely a struggle in the inequity that you're talking about.
And that was based upon the general recommendations from ISB on the first page, the paragraph from the bottom, second paragraph up. All students should have the opportunity to redo, make up, and try again to complete, show progress, or to attempt to complete work assigned prior to remote learning. Emphasis for schoolwork assigned, reviewed, and completed is on learning, not compliance. So that's from back in early or middle to late March. It's one of those things. There's not a good answer here.
Grades now, how April 27th do we start giving grades?
There's not an easy answer here, right? Because I think there's two sides to this. But we're in the situation we're in. And when it started, we're like, what do we need to come up with? And I mean, I'll be honest, Kurt was bugging me all the time. What about grades? Look, I'm not just going to come out of the blue and say, here's what we need to do. So we kind of needed to wait and get some feedback here. And in the end, I had, in my professional opinion, had to go back to what's recommended from the ISBE. Because number one, we're asking staff who've never done this to now all of a sudden do this remote learning and provide kids feedback that they've never done before. And we're going to base grades on that. So anyway.
Quarter 3 grades are in. When did quarter 3 end?
April 3rd.
Well, because, it was April 3rd. We postponed it a week under that first emergency days.
Okay.
So it was supposed to end the first week we were in emergency days. And at that point we said, let's postpone it and let it end the first week we come back if we come back. So when we didn't come back, we went ahead and we got everything finalized and ended that first week of basically that planning week of remote learning. So that first week where we had 5 days to plan in. So that would have been April 3rd and then the 6th, 7th.
Kids were out of school when quarter 3 ended.
Technically,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
But they've had 8
they'd had
8 weeks.
they'd had 8 weeks. And we did give an opportunity. I mean, the teachers went and looked, and we reached out to kids if there was stuff that they needed to, and I directed them on the idea of if there is something where you're in the middle of sending out a grade, just you do what's fair to the kids as far as finishing those things up. So we did that, and as far as I know, that did take place. That's the way we handled that.
So third quarter then could essentially fourth quarter.
Correct,
So
but I
there
think
is
the
a- there is
issue
a grade
is the
assigned.
semester.
There's a grade that could be assigned for the semester, which is your third quarter grade,
Right.
with no change to negatively affect that's
Well,
in this
that's,
past incomplete with option of completing that additional work.
okay, but you're making the assumption that the third quarter grade is going to be the same as they would have gotten if they had had the fourth quarter to work on too. Because, for a semester grade, typically the third quarter and the fourth quarter, if they don't have to take a semester exam, are going to be
Sure.
equal in weight.
Right.
So you're basically giving 9 weeks of work that whole weight. So let's use, for example, somebody that's got straight A's, all right? And the third quarter, they get a B plus. All right, so, well, they had the fourth quarter, they could have brought it up and they still have straight A's. But now they don't, unless we go with a plan where they can work to improve their grade, but that's where we get into the issues.
Right.
What's the standard for that? Is there and that's where you get into this gobbledygook mess of, how would you do that? I think when we started, the whole idea was,
I'll just add to the other component of that is if you're a student who is a straight A student, but you happen to have not such a great third quarter, then you're not going to get the opportunity to bring that up either.
I think that's what.
That's what she.
Oh, okay. Is that what we
That's what I
said?
just
And then,
said.
and a student who has failed third quarter, you're basically telling them you can't do anything about that. If you're saying we're going to assign third quarter grades as is.
right.
Yeah, it's tough because it feels like then the third quarter carries no weight for the work actually was put in and completed. Given
Well,
this-
that's true,
given
but
this
this is,
scenario, and I know we're in unprecedented times. So the
yeah,
fourth
this is
quarter,
just crazy.
there's no way you could assign a letter grade, but I hate to do away completely with the third quarter when it actually was completed. And I think that's what some schools are giving consideration to, that third quarter, layering in what the ISBE says that you can't.
But then
be
you have to
negatively
make your
impacted.
teachers switch right here from complete, incomplete to giving a letter grade in order to determine that somebody can raise it. Is the way this
Not
we're
necessarily,
going,
you
right?
give your third quarter grade as your semester grade, which I think there's examples.
Yeah, there was.
Jody provided some examples of where that was the case. from some
Right, but
schools.
then I thought the whole idea was that no student would be hurt.
Where you get your, well,
They earned it.
they
I
earned
think
their third
that's
quarter
what
grade,
the
They-
point,
they
yeah,
earned their
they
third
earned
quarter
their third
grade,
quarter
and they're
grade.
not going down, I guess, necessarily, so they can't be
Well,
negatively.
the negative effect would be in the GPA part if you used a GPA, correct?
Well, yeah, but also the negative effect, if you're a student who failed third quarter or a student who got an 89% third quarter, the negative impact here is that this is it, you're stuck. There's no reason, and really my question would be, if you're a kid who got a 59% third quarter, what's your motivation to stay engaged? If we're going to tell you that your grade is third quarter, it doesn't really matter what you're going to do this entire fourth quarter, that's going to be your grade.
And I think we've lost a little bit of the message here when we're just talking grades. When the whole idea that we went into this whole e-learning thing was it was about the engagement and the learning and all of that. And we're not talking anymore about learning, now we're talking about grades. So they still experienced the third quarter and they still had an opportunity to learn and to better themselves in whatever they were taking. So, whether that grade gets posted or not really isn't probably the central issue if we're looking at that engagement and learning, because it doesn't really represent 18 weeks of work. It represents 9 weeks of work. So. There's pros, there's two sides to it, and there's going to be some kids disappointed with whatever route we take.
Sure.
But I just think equity-wise, to be fair, the way we started that we need to stay on the same path that we're on and not widen that equity gap.
Well,
What are other local schools doing? Like Altamont, T-Town, Diedrich, Beach City.
Well, when I talked at the ROE and I sent out an email after, and when I was on the phone with Jody, I sent out an email right when I was on the phone with her. I had St. Elmo and Vandalia return saying they're doing some sort of, and I think you got information from Vandalia on grades. I have not heard back from T-Town, but most of the others, especially on our ROE, are using the pass and complete. Now, that doesn't mean there's not some that aren't, but when we first started back in March, that was one of the questions, what's everybody going to do? And then when I asked again, just this last week, a couple of them, some have changed. So now whether they're set up differently in the district and being able to do this, I don't know. I can't believe, as I said to somebody today, there were less, I think there maybe even less than 10% of schools, districts had e-learning plans in place when this started. So we're all, and you can do that, but my question is, and I hate not saying this, but is it valid? Because we're asking staff to do things we've never had them do before, and then we're going to try to grade it. How do we justify that? Because
have we had staff input?
Well, from day one, they've asked about grades. I think everybody understood it was going to be pass and complete because everything that's been sent out that I've sent out and from the state board has been pass and complete.
That's the way.
I mean, the first
are assessing things
the
now,
fir-
right?
The first couple of weeks were shock
Right, I know.
of what I got to do. What? I mean, there may be still some of that there. It's just, it's an unfortunate situation that we're all put in because of the situation. And again, everybody here wants to make the best decision. And we've talked at length of trying to, how do we work this out? But
I think the hard part is that we've already set the expectation that we're grading pass and complete. So to go midstream and change it to a traditional A through F format is quite difficult. I completely understood where Jody was coming from and her examples that she gave me, and it made a lot of sense. But then there were more questions that came about being as such, well, we're not really grading right now. So how do you give a grade if we're not really grading in the traditional sense? We're providing feedback.
And the other issue is there's not direct instruction. I mean that even districts that are trying to do this, it's not direct instruction where I'm instructing my kids on geometry like I am in a classroom. And so that's a whole nother issue and again, I'm not trying to talk against, I certainly understand and spent some time with Jody on the phone and I know there's two sides to every part of this. And I just don't see how, number one, that we can change, but then administer that change and hold to where no student is harmed.
I think we need to make sure that no student is harmed in doing this. Like, I think she has, like we've all said, she has some very valid points. And so I think we need to figure out, if somebody's going to be harmed in their GPA, then that's not good. And we need to find a different way to fix that.
Your GPA is determined by your work for 18 weeks a semester, plus an exam. And the GPA is impacted by the semester grade, and we don't have a semester grade. So it's not like it's an equal situation, I don't think. And at the end of 9 weeks, students didn't know that was going to be their semester grade.
Have we had any staff ask about, are they wanting to take grades at all? Any staff at all?
I have one staff member that is adamant about taking grades.
Out of how many? 30?
One,
Out of how many?
all of them.
How many is that? 50?
I mean, all of my staff members, 50,
Did you have 30?
52.
52.
Hey, Kurt, can you, for that staff member who really wants to take grades, can you tell us why?
No, I don't know. I mean, I'm not holding anything from you. I'm not sure. This is just what they want to do.
Okay.
Probably to encourage engagement is my,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on it because I don't know. I'm not going to put words in somebody else's mouth.
right.
I didn't know if they gave you a reason.
No, and keep in mind, I mean, you're asking for staff and feedback. It's very difficult right now because I don't see my staff. So this is all through emails and those types of things. And I feel like, and I've tried to make that very open to them about sending me emails, and I feel like they have been. But this is just something that staff member had pointed out and said that, no, this is the way I want to do it.
Well, anybody else have? I mean, what are board members thinking? Are they wanting to stick with the past and incomplete, or we want to look a little bit further into this?
I'm in support of staying with the pass incomplete that we've started on.
I have to say, I like the idea of a third quarter grade and pass incomplete for fourth. Assigning a grade in the semester. I think other schools have done it. If we're trying to be a little more progressive, instead of following, we take a stand.
I'm just going to, I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to say it. Keep in mind, if you change this, you're asking me to go back to my staff and change everything that they've done so far. And they have had a lot of change. And asking them to come back and say, hey, we got to rethink this. I mean, they're giving an assessment based on the idea that this was the guidance that they were given. That's the assessment they're designing. That's the assessment that they're doing. And if we change this now, we're going to ask them to go back and redo everything again. And because the state did this, they did this as an emergency days, and we did that one day. And then 2 weeks later, they changed that, and I asked them to change it again. And I'm sorry if I'm a little adamant about it. I just hate to ask them to come back and change all of their planning again in the middle of this, because they worked hard to make something out of not a lot.
And I appreciate that, Kurt. And I don't want people to do and then have to redo again. But I think the fact is there's a third quarter grade, and if fourth quarter's pass fail, and we decide to use that third quarter grade, pass incomplete, we decide to use that third quarter grade as a fourth, I'm not sure exactly what they would have to go back and redo.
I don't think that you can do that unless you give students who feel that their grade is lower by doing that than it should be an opportunity to raise it, because the commitment that we have is that no student will be hurt. So if you have a student whose grade, we use the example, they've got straight A's, they've got a B plus at the end of the third quarter. And for you to say now they get a pass, and so they get a B plus, okay, so now you've just hurt their GPA. In their mind, they want to raise their grade. So now you have to come up with some system of work that they can in some way do that, because we can't let them, right, negatively be impacted in any way. That's the commitment we've been given by the ISBE. And I don't know, I mean, that's what you're talking about, going back and having everybody having to redo and
And you
start
have to do
grading
it
and
per student per class.
yeah.
Not just one student makes a decision. They'd have to make a decision based on every class and every grade they get in every class.
Okay. Jill or Jane, Steve, Kathleen, do you have any comments?
I would say in the normal realm that I absolutely hate this, I just do. It seems like a cop out. However, we are not in the normal realm.
Right.
So everything considered, I think I would have to support this and
Just stick with
continue as we
how-
are.
I also like the idea of giving kids hope, and hope is if they have to achieve a goal, but the goal is just now just to pass. That's hard for me to digest as a parent,
Right.
but I don't, there's no system of grading in place. That's the problem. You can't improve if there's not a system of grading in place.
Well, and not just
So-
that, but some of the courses, how do you take some of these courses that are hands-on or lab courses, or you need to have the software for graphic arts, and you don't
Right.
have, how do you give kids work to do that can be graded to the standard that they would do in class? It's just not possible. I mean, some classes are more in tune with e-learning or remote learning than others, but some of them are just impossible to even to even think what kind of assignments they could be giving them, for an extended period of time, especially one that is going to raise a grade like that. So I just think it's mind-boggling. Just as Kurt said, every course, every student, it just could be craziness.
Mr. Fox,
Yeah.
I have a question for him. As a parent, if this was going to affect your child, what would you think? Well, I mean, how would you feel? I mean, he's got kids in that school right now.
Well, it would depend on what situation my child is in. If they were sitting in a situation, I struggle with this because I push my kids pretty hard academically, and so I want them to have a reason to do their best and to attack the projects that they're given right now. And for them, they've always wanted to be the best, and so grades were important. They always wanted to get the highest grade they could get. So not having those grades, it comes down to more intrinsic motivation. And I think that's probably the one teacher at the high school who's mentioned, I would like to grade. It's about keeping students motivated to accomplish that grade. Because some kids may not have the intrinsic motivation, but that grade is the motivation. And I think, that's what I would worry about. I agree with what you've said, Brad, on the third quarter grade was earned. Absolutely. I think, it is hard though to base a final grade on that because there's a lot of other things, if a kid got that A minus, right now, A minuses take away your 4.0 and A or an A plus don't. And so how do we get them to give them that opportunity to increase that from a half a percentage point can make the difference.
Yeah.
And you're now a valedictorian or you're not, you got a 4.0 or you don't, it's a half percentage point. How do we make that up in fourth quarter for those kids? And there's a lot that can happen in that. So I'm not a fan of pass incomplete. I'm not, because what does incomplete mean? And when does it get made up?
Right.
And how do we move forward? There's a lot of things in my mind that it doesn't make sense, but I also don't know a better way to do it. And I think that's why the state gave us that guidance, because they couldn't figure out a better way to do it either. So they said, just make it pass or incomplete and we'll move on.
Right.
And the state does that a lot to us. They give us things that don't make sense to them and they ask us to make sense of it later. So from a parent perspective, pass incomplete is probably the fairest thing, but it's not what I like. I would rather have a grade my kids could earn and work toward, because that just builds that work ethic in all kids. So, yeah.
So right now, our second semester, they're not going to have a grade. So when their GPAs are figured, they're just going to be figured a semester short.
Right.
Yeah.
So there'll be no GPA information put in for second semester.
So I'm okay with that for seniors, but our underclassmen, what I mean, I think we need to be thinking long-term here, and what are we gonna do this fall if e-learning is put in place this fall? God forbid, we hope it's not, but if it is, are we going to write off another semester, or are we going to put a grading scale in there somewhere? I mean, that's something we're gonna have to really think about.
Whatever we decided to do, we'd have to do it from the get-go. We'd have to do it
Correct.
from the beginning, which
Correct.
we can't
Well,
do now.
I don't think we have a choice right now other than pass.
Yeah.
I hate that because I think that, I agree with you, Brad, that the third quarter grade, they've earned that, but they also have not had the opportunity to complete that grade, that semester grade.
Well, that's something we've started talking about anyway in the fall in regards to hopefully not needing this, but we've got to be prepared. And, instead of trying to do this in a 2-week manner, and trial by fire, I think our teachers and staff have learned a lot, learned probably what not to do as much as what to do. And nobody wants to go through that process, or if we had a choice, we didn't want that, but that's where we are and that's where we were. So,
So do we need to get, I mean, I know that this is time sensitive. Do we need to get any more information before we make that, or is the majority of the board one way or the other?
well, I think, Jane, you haven't shared yet, I don't think, but
I agree, we can change things now. Pass or incomplete.
so look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The
I
consensus.
think we have to stay with what we have at this point. We didn't set any sort of expectation for grades. That is unfortunate. And I'm with the other parents in the room as far as the grade does keep a lot of kids engaged, unfortunately. That's just it. But I don't see how we can start implementing that system at this point. I do have a wish, though, if we do stay in an e-learning format, or if we ever have a emergency situation, whether it's a virus or not, and we have to be off for a month, I hope we've learned a lot of lessons on how we implement e-learning for all of our kids.
And I think we've learned some
and
lessons about what steps we might have to take to make it equitable for all of our kids, which is a huge issue.
And to be a little better prepared for all of our kids.
Okay. I think so. I guess the consensus was to keep it the way it was.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, is there anything else, Mr. Dunn?
No.
Hey, Angie, I would,
Yes.
I would just like to publicly say, a huge thank you to Mr. Doan, our administrators, staff, and, support staff for everything you guys have had to go through and that you continue to go through. We don't understand everything you go through daily. You guys do. But I feel like that the 40 through this has been united in a way. And I'd just like to publicly thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's a lot of time and decisions being made, and I don't know how many times I've used. I know with our administrators probably sick of me. I don't have the answers. We haven't done this before, so we got to figure this out together, right? So, and our staff's been wonderful of doing the time and working together and trying to do what's best for kids. And I really believe that's really helped our kids. Are there things we can do better? Yes. But you know what? And I say this not just for our district, but for our profession. There's not a lot of professions that can be thrown into this and respond the way they did. And that's because of the teachers and the administrators across the state and across the country who generally are doing this for the right reasons. And we need to say thank you to them because they're the ones working with kids every day. But I certainly appreciate the comments. We've had a lot of positive comments, and as this goes on and stress rises, it becomes tougher and more difficult. But it's something we need to work for. The goal is to help our kids. And, you know, I think I've said this to a couple of you. This is just going to continue because, right, we got to make a transition for the fall.
Mhm.
And when kids come back, and what's that look like? And, you know, it's not going to probably look like it always has. And so we're going to have to be open and open about that and try to help our kids get to where they need to be. So certainly appreciate that.
Are there any other comments from the board? None? Okay, we would need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Who said second? Robin? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carries. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
So